Let me ask you something. What happens when two of the world's fastest growing nations suddenly decide that they no longer want to play by the old rules? What happens when the very countries the world once underestimated, India and China, join hands in a move that threatens to flip the global economy upside down? For decades, people said it couldn't happen. They said these nations were too different, too competitive, too distant. But today we face a reality that shakes the foundation of global power, a $1, 6 trillion trade alliance that could rewrite the future. And the real question is the world ready for what comes next? The moment we ask the question, what happens when India and China unite? We immediately shift the audience into a state of alertness. It forces them to pause, to reflect, and to recognize that something bigger than politics or rivalry is unfolding. This question works because for decades the world believed such a partnership was impossible. Two economic giants with different histories, strategies, and ideologies. Yet the very impossibility of this alliance is what makes it so powerful. It challenges assumptions, breaks mental barriers, and tells people that the world they thought they understood is evolving faster than anyone expected. A question like this doesn't just inform, it provokes. It makes the listener confront the reality that global power is no longer predictable. Nations that were once boxed in by stereotypes are rewriting their narratives. India is no longer seen as just a service powerhouse. China is no longer defined only by manufacturing. Together, they represent a new kind of strength, raw population, expanding markets, resource demand, innovation growth, and political boldness. When these forces combine, the result is not just economic cooperation, but a shift in global gravity. This question also reveals a hidden tension. If two of the world's largest economies suddenly synchronize their goals, does the existing world order have the capacity to absorb that shock? And if not, who adapts and who falls behind? Curiosity builds because everyone wants to know whether this alliance is a temporary convenience or a long-term repositioning that could define the next century. By framing the entire discussion with this single question, the audience is pulled into the center of the unfolding change. They are no longer passive listeners. They become investigators, thinkers, and observers of a world where power no longer stays in one corner but spreads, shifts, and transforms in unexpected ways. For years, America enjoyed a position that felt almost untouchable. It led global trade, shaped international rules, and set the pace for innovation and economic growth. This dominance created a sense of stability, but it also created something far more dangerous: comfort. When a nation believes its position is guaranteed, it stops noticing how fast the world around it is changing. It stops paying attention to the rise of new players. It assumes the system will continue to revolve around it simply because it always has. That comfort turned into overconfidence, and overconfidence slowly turned into blind spots. While America operated from a place of established power, India and China operated from a place of hunger. They built factories, expanded infrastructure, attracted investment, and developed new technologies. They made mistakes, adjusted quickly, and kept moving forward. Their growth wasn't loud or theatrical. It was steady, disciplined, and fueled by the desire to break free from limitations set by older powers. Each year they climbed higher, and each year the economic gap narrowed, even though many refused to acknowledge it. The turning point came when these two rising forces looked at the global landscape and realized something. America's comfortable position had given them an opening. Supply chains needed alternatives. Markets needed diversity. Developing nations wanted partners who understood their challenges. India and China stepped into this space with speed and ambition, offering manufacturing strength, tech development, digital infrastructure, and massive consumer markets. Suddenly, they were no longer competing in separate lanes. They were shaping the same global future. America didn't collapse, it just slowed down enough for others to catch up. And in a world of rapid change, slowing down is enough to shift the balance. The rise of India and China isn't a surprise for those who watched closely. It's the natural result of decades of quiet progress meeting decades of comfortable dominance. The $6 trillion trade shock is more than just a number. It represents a massive structural shift in how the world moves goods, money, and influence. This alliance marks a moment where two economic giants decide they no longer want to operate under systems built decades ago by someone else. Instead, they are building their own pathways, their own rules, and their own connections. The scale of this deal sends a message to every nation. The global economic center is no longer fixed. It is moving, expanding, and being reshaped by those who are willing to take bold steps. What makes this trade shock so significant is not only its size, but its intent. It aims to restructure supply chains that once flowed almost exclusively through Western routes. It opens doors for investment in ports, rail networks, digital infrastructure, energy corridors, and manufacturing clusters. These aren't small adjustments. They are foundations of a new economic map. When two nations with massive populations and growing industrial capabilities decide to coordinate, the world feels the tremors. Companies rethink where to build factories. Investors rethink where to place capital. Smaller nations rethink who their preferred partners should be. Another powerful element of this trade shift is the conversation around currency. By settling large portions of trade outside traditional systems, India and China signal their desire to operate with more independence. This creates ripple effects that challenge the dominance of older financial structures and encourage other nations to explore alternative channels. The shock also lies in the speed at which opportunities are opening. Technology exchanges are expanding, energy cooperation is accelerating, and trade routes are being renegotiated. What once took decades to build is now forming in a matter of years. And with each step, the global economy becomes less dependent on the traditional power centers that dominated for most of the last century. India and China have never been simple partners. Their histories are complex, their borders tense, and their political paths very different. But beneath all of that lies something stronger than rivalry: ambition. Both nations want to rise without limits, shape their own future, and escape the pressure of systems built by others. And when ambition aligns, even unlikely partners can find common ground. That is exactly what is happening now. Their cooperation isn't built on friendship. It's built on necessity, opportunity, and shared goals that suddenly overlap more than ever before. India seeks a world where its voice carries weight equal to its population and potential. It wants stronger manufacturing, bigger exports, secure energy routes, and less dependency on Western markets. China, on the other hand, wants stability in its supply chains, reliable trade partners, expanding markets for its goods, and reduced economic pressure from Western political decisions. When both nations looked at the global landscape, they saw that working together, even selectively, could accelerate their goals at a pace neither could achieve alone. Their alignment also comes from a desire for strategic independence. Both nations want to trade, invest, and build without external interference. By cooperating on infrastructure, digital technology, energy systems, and goods movement, they create an ecosystem where they control the speed, the direction, and the rule. This independence becomes even more powerful when backed by their combined population, consumer base, and industrial strength. Another factor pushing them closer is the shift in global alliances. As international politics become more unpredictable, both countries see value in strengthening regional stability. Their cooperation reduces friction, lowers costs, and opens new opportunities across Asia. It transforms competitors into collaborators, not permanently, not fully, but strategically in areas where cooperation multiplies power rather than divides it. This alignment is not emotional, it is practical. It is driven by economics, shaped by global pressure, and fueled by the understanding that in a changing world, working together, even partially, unlocks advantages neither nation wants to ignore. The ripple effects of this alliance extend far beyond India and China. When two major economies redirect their trade routes and reshape their supply chains, the entire global market reacts. Countries across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe suddenly find themselves facing a new question. Should they continue depending on traditional Western economic channels, or should they align with this rising trade powerhouse? This decision is not ideological, it's practical. Nations want growth, stability, investment, and access to markets. If India and China can offer those benefits faster and with fewer conditions, the attraction becomes hard to resist. Many developing nations have long struggled with trade imbalances, slow infrastructure development, and limited access to global markets. This new alliance gives them alternatives. New ports, new shipping routes, and new digital corridors create openings for countries that were once stuck on the margins of global trade. The promise of investment, manufacturing partnerships, and energy cooperation can dramatically accelerate their economic progress. As they see India and China expanding their influence, they naturally gravitate toward the momentum. No nation wants to be left behind when a new center of growth emerges. For regions like Southeast Asia and Africa, this shift offers a chance to diversify their economic dependencies. Instead of relying on one or two major powers, they can connect with multiple rising giants. This reduces risk and increases bargaining power. Even the Middle East, traditionally aligned with Western markets, finds value in expanding ties with these Asian economies, whether through energy deals, logistics routes, or technology projects. The domino effect also impacts global companies. Manufacturers reconsider where to build factories. Investors reconsider which currencies and markets offer long-term security. Technology firms look for partners with expanding consumer bases. As these decisions accumulate, the balance of global economic gravity tilts further toward the India-China corridor. The world is not just watching the shift, it is moving with it, adapting to a landscape where influence is no longer dominated by a single player but spread across dynamic, fast-growing regions. The emergence of this alliance forces America to confront a reality it hasn't faced in decades. The world is no longer shaped by one dominant player. The rise of India and China doesn't signal America's collapse. Instead, it marks a moment where the country must rediscover the urgency, innovation, and competitive spirit that once drove its leadership. For too long, the United States operated under the assumption that its influence was guaranteed, that its systems would always be the default choice, and that other nations would naturally follow its lead. But the global landscape has changed, and now America must decide whether to adapt or fall behind in this accelerating race. As India and China expand their cooperation, they create new economic standards, trade routes, and technological systems that don't rely on traditional Western frameworks. This shift challenges America to rethink its strategies. It cannot depend on old alliances alone. It cannot rely solely on past achievements. It must prove, again, that it can lead through innovation, not comfort. It must build faster, invest smarter, and collaborate more strategically. The new challenge is not just external, it is internal. Can America evolve at the pace required to stay relevant in a world where competition has become global, agile, and relentless? This awakening also pushes the U.S. to strengthen relationships with countries that are now being courted by both India and China. Nations in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East no longer see America as the only path to development. They now have options, and options shift power. America must respond by offering partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than dominance, and by recognizing that influence today is earned through cooperation, respect, and economic opportunity. The race ahead isn't about who controls the world, it's about who contributes the most to its growth. India and China have entered this race with overwhelming momentum. Now, the question is whether America will rise to the challenge, rediscover its drive, and compete in a world where leadership is no longer inherited, but constantly re-earned through action, speed, and vision. The world is standing at the edge of a major transformation. What we once believed was fixed is now shifting. What we once assumed was impossible is happening right in front of us. India and China, two nations shaped by ambition, pressure, and unstoppable growth, have chosen to carve their own path, and the impact is shaking the foundations of global power. This $1.6 trillion alliance is more than a headline. It is a reminder that the future belongs to those who build it. Power is not permanent. Influence is not guaranteed. Nations rise when they embrace change, push boundaries, and act with courage. And nations fall behind when they ignore the world's evolution and cling to old comfort. The world is not slowing down, the world is accelerating, and the true question is, will we step forward with it, or will we be left watching from the sidelines? This is the moment to open our eyes wider, think bolder, and prepare smarter. Stay informed. Stay aware of how global shifts affect your life, your opportunities, and your future. Do not wait for change to arrive at your door. Understand it, follow it, and position yourself to benefit from it. Learn how nations rise, learn why alliances form, learn where the new markets are emerging and where the next wave of growth is coming from. Because in a world that is being rewritten in real time, the people who win are the ones who pay attention. So take the lessons, take the insights, and take action. Not tomorrow, not someday, today, right now. Thank you for listening, for learning, and for staying sharp in a world that rewards awareness and punishes complacency. Your attention is your power, and your curiosity is your advantage. Stay focused, stay ambitious, and remember the future doesn't just happen. It is built by those who refuse to stand still. Thank you. And until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and stay ready.